So VRS has a new wheelbase and wheel, and as someone that loved their last round of hardware, that's of interest to me. The DFP15 and R295, whilst not mandatory to be together, will be found together a lot. Why? Because bundled together, they cost approximately £850, including VAT. Knock off another 5% with a discount link, such as mine, and you're talking a smidge over £800. For a highly capable 15Nm wheelbase with a highly functional wheel, covered by a 3-year warranty from a reputable US brand which has a deep and genuine tie to sim racing, that's an attractive option if you're a PC sim racing enthusiast looking for your top tier force feedback system. My favourite wheelbase of all I've used ever was actually VRS's previous model, the VRS DFP20. It's a purist's dream. If the DFP15 can just take over the family business without messing things up, then it should succeed. Let's take a look and see if this should be on your shortlist. Before I begin, VRS has provided the DFP15 and R295 free for review. Due to this arrangement, I always mark videos like this as paid promotion within YouTube. However, this is a review, not an ad. Good and bad points will be covered as I see them, and all words are my own. Watch the whole video through, but if you make up your mind and do head over to buy, you can get 5% off VRS using the link in the video description. Doing so also helps me out, so thank you. First up, a quick summary of the main talking points in the video. The DFP15's feedback is very good, amongst the sharpest and most finely detailed that I've used, and benefits from VRS's excellent force feedback algorithms. Such lightness, detail and clarity does come at the cost of being a little bit fussier to tune to your exact liking. My settings are linked in the description for you to copy. The R295 is basically VRS's version of the Simagic GT Neo steering wheel. Relatively cheap, packed with features but not very comfortable or luxurious, and it currently only works with VRS wheelbases. It's not bad, but if you have a budget, then skip it. I experienced an issue with my QR connector. Long story short, in my opinion there's a potential design flaw which I hope VRS will address. Far from game breaking and easily fixable, but I'm mentioning it all the same in case it affects you. Overall, the DFP15 is a great wheelbase. The R295 is an okay wheel, but for the price, they're an attractive combo with a long 3-year warranty and a US-based brand with a good reputation in sim racing and a solid past record. Finally, if you already have a DFP20, keep it. The DFP15 is great, but not really an upgrade. It's just newer, lighter, neater and less industrial. Less scary looking for newer buyers. I do still prefer the DFP20 over the DFP15 at the moment, but that may change down the line with software updates and improvements to unleash the full potential. So first up, it's the wheelbase. It's a 15Nm direct drive wheelbase with an NRG style quick release carrying a USB data pass-through. Meaning, as well as the R295 wheel, you can attach third-party wheels to this effectively wire-free with the aid of VRS's quick release adapter. That's good news, though do beware that nothing is guaranteed if you run the upper end third-party wheels through it. I tried running this top-of-the-line Grid 911 RSR wheel through it, but it suffered from unreliability, from what I suspect to just be too much power draw. There's a 750 mAh power ceiling with the DFP15, which should cover most, though it just didn't play ball with that one as it can draw up to a full 1000 milliamps. It is a very hungry hippo to be fair, and I'm not too surprised it didn't work reliably. The point I'm trying to make is, it's an open USB pass-through that should accept most USB wheels with the aid of a VRS quick release, much like Asetek's Invicta quick release, and that makes the DFP15 attractive to people that want to use wheels from other manufacturers without unnecessary roadblocks. Unlike VRS's previous wheelbase, the DFP20, which had an external control box and a big beefy industrial cables, which I love by the way, the DFP15 does it the same way as any other, just a power block and a USB cable. That's it. So if you were intrigued by VRS previously, but were put off by the added hardware and cabling of the DFP20, consider it dealt with here. It's a fairly handsome, understated thing with no external gimmicks whatsoever. Individually, outside of a bundle, the DFP15 would cost around £525 after a 5% discount. That's very enticing given it's German made and has a long 3-year warranty administered by a US brand. Mounting can be done via the front, like I'm doing here, or via the underneath, as the base comes supplied with these captive T-nuts ready to accept mounting from below, and they are compatible with Fanatec hole patterns, so should play nice with almost any cockpit out there. Now to turn to the turning thingy, the R295 wheel. 295mm diameter, hence the name. This is the only VRS brand wheel right now that comes with everything you need to just plug and play with the DFP15 out of the box with no assembly required, as it's already equipped with the new style of VRS quick release. This is why the two products in this video will be thick as thieves until the day if or when VRS expands the wheel lineup. It's just the simplest pairing possible at the moment and guaranteed compatible. The R295 has a spread of illuminated buttons, rev and flag lights that can be driven by SimHub, plenty of dials and thumb wheels on board, as well as the dual clutch paddles. It's all quite standard issue. In many ways, this is just VRS's own version of the Magic GT Neo because they're very similar in how they're equipped and how they feel in your hand. The shifters are a little bit noisy, but the supplied dampening pads help take the edge off a little and they feel pretty good. The supplied stickers are more than generous for allowing you to style and label the wheel in a way that suits you, but one gripe is that the buttons do like to wander in angle quite a bit. This sticker was straight when I put it on. Now, unlike the German-made DFP15, the R295 is made in China but still gets 3 years of warranty. Individually, it would cost around £285 after the 5% discount, so it's a pretty inexpensive wheel in the grand scheme of things. However, that particular sword cuts both ways because the R295 has no discrete USB connectivity of its own. It can only be used on the DFP15 or the DFP20 with an adapter, at least right now, and is therefore only of interest to those with one of those. So it limits the appeal right down to just VRS customers. Furthermore, the grips are made of non-slip TPE. I hate this material. It's hard and unluxurious. It's basically just hard plastic with extra steps. I personally don't believe it's ever worth the potential cost saving, and I wish they hadn't resorted to it here. Just like the Magic GT Neo, these grips look like rubber, feel like rubber in terms of surface property, but have none of the comfort, softness or tack of rubber. It's my least favourite grip material. Wear gloves and you won't really care that much. The R295 definitely ain't perfect, it's not exceptional in any regard, but it's fairly low priced and ready to connect. It will be one of the very cheapest wheels you can use with a DFP15, so it remains a convenient option to get going with if you're choosing VRS, and there are good reasons to do exactly that. So let's get to driving and let's get to experiencing this force feedback. Having uninstalled my beloved DFP20 to make way for using this, it has a difficult act to follow, but I will allow it to try with an open mind. Firstly, allow me to address those of you who are shopping for an upgrade from something like a Logitech G29 or even a CSL-DD, because the main question you'll have is, will this really be worth the money? Well, not only are you going to get your socks blown off by the DFP15, but probably your eyebrows as well. It's going to be a tremendous upgrade for anyone moving up from an 8Nm setup or below. I can assure you, no reasonable sim racer has ever made such a move and then gone back. This is a one-way street. Like going from Euro Shopper buttery spread to full fat Lurpak. After spending time with it, I find that generally speaking, the DFP15 feels superbly strong, ridiculously agile, and very smooth with a deep focus on absolute maximum responsiveness. That much is certain. It takes a bit of experimentation to control the detail so that things feel clean and luxurious, but it's not hard to do. If you run it unleashed, there's a fine, almost molecular presence of detail that I don't think I got with any previous wheelbases I've tested. It's rapidly responsive indeed. On Le Mans Ultimate, the experience can only be described as completely ridiculous at times. Ripping over the rumble strips at speed is like shaking hands with a high voltage power line. Clouting the curbs comes with sharp consequences, and if you try to drive down the Mulsanne straight with a flat spot, the wheel will vibrate so fast that it will become visible only to kestrels and slow motion cameras. Compared to the superbly smooth, solid, strong and silky DFP20, the DFP15 feels lightweight, digital and insanely sharp. VRS's technicians have confirmed that the internal motor of the DFP15 is much lighter. The DFP20 has more outright power and a higher technical slew rate, but the DFP15's lower internal inertia means it's the one that feels more finely agile and intricate. Like how a Lotus with 250 horsepower will feel faster than a Mercedes with 300. VRS's force feedback system, the algorithms feeding the motor from within are simply excellent. That's what made the DFP20 so good to me, and I'm getting the same foundational feeling here in the way weight transfer and wheel loading is communicated to me. The downside of the increased light-footedness is that sometimes the feedback may feel like it has some sharper edges on it than I was used to with the DFP20. It does feel harsher and not as luxurious just because of the lower mass. There was a time when I would have wanted to be violently force-fed every single data point the sim is throwing out, but nowadays I have a bigger picture attitude to feedback. That's when filtering and smoothing options start to become necessary. I find the DFP15 suits me with a dash of friction and smoothing to basically put back some of the internal weight through digital means. In essence, I felt almost as though I was getting too much detail, too much info, and not quite enough meat in the actual steering feel. It definitely took me longer to pinpoint a sweet spot in the tuning settings that felt both raw and responsive, but clean and free of noise and grit. I've put my settings in the video description. After experimenting quite a bit and finding that Goldilocks zone that feels best for me, I've come to enjoy the DFP15 greatly, and I had to remind myself that this is a wheelbase on the cheaper end. It's cheaper than Simagic's 12Nm Alpha Evo, much cheaper than Fanatec's 12Nm Clubsport DD, just to name a couple. VRS's DFP20 wheelbase is a high quality yet value for money purist masterpiece to be. The cheaper yet newer DFP15 is not that far behind, all things considered, and I think it acts a lot more expensive than it is. Now, a quick side note, because it may not be the case for very long, but whilst in most simulations the feedback is super smooth, iRacing's 360Hz force feedback mode can cause the feedback to feel very gritty and grainy in certain cars. The IndyCar, just an example, feels like stirring lumpy porridge at higher speeds, and this really threw me off. It had me worrying. However, most other cars felt completely fine and normal. It's easy to work around if you encounter this sensation in your most frequently used cars. You can swap back to 60Hz mode by changing this value from 1 to 0 in the iRacing app.ini file. This particular issue could disappear with an iRacing or VRS update by the time you watch this, so just drive it and see if you experience roughness to any distracting level. It's probably the 360Hz thing, and quite a few people do still prefer iRacing's 60Hz mode for the time being. It's less interesting and textured, but the feedback is purer without the need for smoothing or filtering. Another side note, during testing a different type of problem also surfaced, this time definitely falling on the side of hardware and definitely something for VRS to worry about. Under load, there began to feel like there was a noticeable tick when moving side to side. Initially I suspected this was the quick release connection, but it actually turned out to be the way the wheel side element of the QR attaches to the shaft, because I could reproduce it with no wheel attached just by twisting the base under load by hand. To cut a long story short, the wheel side QR, this bit, was slipping on the shaft under rotation. This key and this keyway have some kind of tolerance or clearance present which isn't resolved when it's all assembled and tightened up. So it's allowing the wheel side QR to slip on the shaft a tiny amount, but enough to produce an audible tick which I could also feel through the wheel. Very distracting in sims like iRacing where the feedback is quiet enough for things like that to really stick out as abnormal. The solution? Slotting a piece of card between the key and the keyway seemed to resolve the issue, so I've passed on this feedback and I'm interested to see how VRS are going to address it. It seems like a design oversight that could cause more widespread issues over time. At least one other person has reported this too. This could potentially be an issue for some people upgrading their DFP20 with a new QR system as well, because it all revolves around how this connects to that. I'll update the pinned comment with any resolution or feedback coming from VRS about this, but for now, packing that area with a tiny slice of tape or material has seemingly done the trick. It might have been a tiny tick, but I felt it, I didn't want to, and I shouldn't have to. I think VRS is going to be forced to come up with a response to this as the problem worsens over time with wear and tear. Luckily, it could just be a case of sending a revised QR adapter which they could send out to those affected, or a shim of some type that customers can stick to the sides of a key, but let's see what the response will be. So enough about the base, how about the steering wheel? The R295 does do a lot of stuff. Nobody can say it doesn't cover all bases with its many buttons, encoders, dials, dual funky switches and dual clutch paddles. It just doesn't do it with tremendous style or comfort. The grips were a big letdown to me within 5 seconds of taking it out of the box. I knew what was coming. I've been here with the GT Neo before. The previous VRS wheel had lovely silicone grips that were perfectly moulded and shaped. One of the most pleasing and comfortable wheels to use, even if it looked a bit plain overall. I loved it because it felt good. I forgave all the less important shortcomings because of that. The R295 is nowhere near. I can see that it's priced much cheaper than the old wheel was, of course, but I wish they'd just gone that little bit further in manufacturing to give it a proper pair of grips at least. It would have made the world of difference and would have been well worth any added cost. Given the 15 Nm power level of a wheelbase, if you do opt for the R295, be prepared to use gloves to add the appropriate grip and comfort that the wheel currently lacks. I levelled the same criticism at the Simagic GT Neo, so it wouldn't be fair for VRS to get away with it just because I really like the brand. The rev and flag lights are also kinda underwhelming and small. You'll have a hard time noticing their presence even at full brightness. They're just not the most overt, and I can't help but feel they've just been plonked there just to prevent potential criticism over a lack of them. It feels like a wheel that was made to meet a design spec that was sent in the form of a written checklist, not a distinct vision. But still, there are definitely some strong reasons you'd choose the R295 to go with a VRS wheelbase. The price is low, the 3-year warranty is generous, it's still nicely sized, it's still SimHub compatible, and it is the one wheel right now that you can just click and go with on your DFP15 for minimal faff, all for roughly £300. Price is context, and in this context I'm probably giving this wheel an overly hard time just because it makes my office job indoor hands a bit achy. Noise wise, I do feel as though the DFP15 and R295 combo can be noisy, especially if you let it rip over highly detailed textures without filtering. Here's a compilation of clips demonstrating the noise levels over the same ripple curve depending on the filtering levels. The DFP15's motor does create more noise than the DFP20 when it's really being challenged with curbing effects. I'm sure most of that stems from the contents of the NRG quick release because it's a familiar type of metallic resonance that I remember from testing Moser and Simagic wheelbases as well, which share this quick release connection types with the integrated ball bearings. And the R295's buttons do also rattle a bit when subject to those same conditions, so it all combines to make it a bit of a rambunctious setup when pushed to the extremes. There's a price to pay for running the DFP15 as aggressively as it can be, and that price is a lack of demurity. You'll either love that or reach for the filters. Right, so let's round this all up nicely. I like the DFP15 a lot. It seems very technically strong, especially for the cost, and I do believe it will only get better as VRS develop and improve the firmware that surrounds it. The force feedback is amongst the best you'll get, and even though I would still choose the DFP20 over it, I concede that the DFP15 is a better choice for the everyday sim racer with a much neater hardware layout and data carrying quick release, not to mention markedly cheaper. The issue I had with the base side QR ticking is a concern. I'll be surprised if it doesn't affect more people as it seems to be caused by the design. However, I would also be surprised if VRS didn't address it properly if that's found to be the case. We'll have to wait and see on that one. The R295 wheel is a competent budget option, just not the prime option. It's fairly cheap, simple, and just works with the DFP15. It just doesn't do any one thing exceptionally well, or to any degree of luxury. It fits the description of standard issue, and as such should be treated as the go-to wheel if you're just keeping costs to a minimum. If you have a budget, you should match the DFP15 to something more fitting from the likes of Cube Controls or so on. The grips do let the whole wheel down with the R295, and I can't help but think it would have been a superb cost-conscious wheel had they just gone a little bit further and put some proper rubber or silicone on it. I let the odd things slip if the wheel feels good to use, but this doesn't particularly, but your experience may vary. The R295 is up against it though. You look out there, the Simagic GT Neo is a strong alternative simply due to its open platform. The newly released Conspit GT300 seems to be even stronger than that. The only aspect that they can't match is VRS's very long warranty and compatibility with the DFP15 out of the box with no extras required. Finally, as of right now, both the DFP15 and DFP20 are available. Which is better? Personally, my vote still goes to the DFP20 for as long as it's available. It's insanely heavy duty in all respects, gives you a great sense of dependability and professional grade reliance, and has a silky smoothness to the force feedback output that subtly beats anything else I've used along the way, including the DFP15. It remains my favourite wheelbase of all time, and the one I have the most affinity with. It just fits my style and speaks to me. I can't lie, when the DFP15 was announced, I did think to myself, what's the point in that? VRS already has the top tier DFP20. And not only that, but the upgradable DFP20 with its various price brackets also poses questions as to why the DFP15 was needed. But I also believe that in a year, definitely two, I'll have proven to be a skeptic on that front. The DFP15 will have been refined via firmware and software to the point that it will start to clearly surpass it in terms of feedback and maybe compatibility with future effects that might be introduced down the line by the simulations we play. That's my most likely bet, but it's just speculation. Right now, there's not that much difference other than cost, but given time, that difference may start to widen. All in all, it's an incredibly good wheelbase as it is, with superb power and feedback detail. I would be happy to run with it. That's it. I hope that was entertaining and informative. Don't forget to check my settings page in the video description for my force feedback tuning options. Furthermore, don't forget about the 5% discount link there too for VRS in all regions. Feel free to leave questions or comments and I'll respond as necessary, and cheers again.